And let me tell a story, a true story. This is an airline cockpit. I have a private pilot's license. And when I was first learning to fly, I had a flight. I was still a student pilot. It was my first flight without an instructor in the plane, where I was traveling away from my home area. So I'm traveling hundreds of miles, and I have all my navigation maps. It's the first time I've done this without an instructor. I'm alone. I'm pretty scared. I'm flying along. And along the way, the low voltage light comes on the instrument panel. Now, they hadn't trained me yet anything about the plane hardware. So I was lucky I knew how to fly at this point. I had no idea what that meant. I mean, I can kind of guess, but... so, what did I do? The first thing I do, I look at that low voltage light, I tap it, it stays on. It works in the movies, I don't know. Then I looked at every other instrument on my instrument panel. I looked at the airspeed indicator, and it said, everything's fine, airspeed's right. I looked at my altimeter, it said, perfect altitude, everything's good. Fuel gauge, plenty of gas, nothing to worry about. My navigation aid, you're on course, no problems here. Every other instrument said everything's fine. So I just outvoted the low voltage light. I ignored it. I said, well, everything must be fine. Every other instrument says everything's fine. Right? I nearly crashed. Nearly crashed the plane that day. And I learned a valuable lesson, which is, imagine that, who would have thought the low voltage light was actually tuned in to different information than every other instrument on my display panel. And in fact, it had the key data I needed to not crash my plane. And it sounds like, how obvious could that be, right? It sounds really stupid when I say it, but we do this in organizations all the time. We outvote the one person that has a key perspective, that sees something that no one else sees, that's needed to keep us flying towards our purpose. Right? And we outvote that. You hear arguments like, well, I don't see it, as if that's a valid argument for why that perspective really is invalid. It's amazing. And yet, when you step back, we do that actually for good reason, because we also can't fly that plane by trying to take into account every little tiny ounce of data that's coming at you all the time from all those instruments. There's too much, right? We can't integrate every perspective. It doesn't make sense. We'd crash the plane just as well. And in fact, when we're flying a plane, you don't want to. What you want to do is integrate the minimally sufficient perspectives at every moment in time. Right? We don't want to integrate all perspectives. We don't want to outvote the fuel gauge, right? What we want to do is integrate the minimally sufficient perspectives. Those we need to integrate in every moment in time to keep the plane flying towards its goal. Right? And same in organization. So what we need to do is have a process where we can create space for everyone to have a voice and to bring their perspectives, and we can rapidly sort through them, because we don't want to integrate everything all the time. We want to create a space where the key perspectives, the ones that are needed to avoid a crash or to really help that plane move towards its purpose, those are the ones we want to integrate, and we want to continually do that over time. So in Holacracy, there's a decision-making method called integrative decision-making that helps us do this. And it's used in what we call governance meetings in Holacracy. So integrative decision-making is how we decide governance, how we decide how we're going to work together. We're going to integrate multiple perspectives to figure out how we should structure our work together. And I want to make a point. This is not about consensus, right? What Holacracy is going for is not about consensus. First off, it's not about the people again, the personal feelings, right? It's not about for or against. Imagine I'm flying my plane. I don't really care how my low voltage light felt. Yeah, and that's not a cold, callous statement. I mean, if it did have feelings, I would be compassionate towards that, I think, but it's not relevant to my purpose, right? It's the data I want. If it has feelings, I'm interested, because those might be clues, right? It might be clues to some underlying data. Emotions become clues. When we show up in an organization, we are the sensors for this new consciousness, right? And as sensors, we might experience things. We might experience frustration. We might experience what we call tension, just when you feel that sense of something could be different than it is. And all those are great. Underneath those emotions is data, and that's what we want to surface and integrate.